Okay, I think I got it. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, beautiful people. If you're new here, my name is Tydeja. Everyone calls me Deja. And this is D-Love Journey, my channel where we travel through the journey to our higher selves. We share our laughter, our lessons, breakdowns, everything in between while encouraging each other just to love yourself more, learn yourself more every single day. So today I am going live, and this was a scheduled live for those of you who decided to join me for the book club of The Silent Patient. So I have my book here. I was thinking about just scheduling a actual video out where I recorded, just the video and posted it and then did a premiere so we could just do a live chat. But I decided I might as well just go ahead and go live. So bear with me, okay? All right, so for those of you who haven't gotten the book already, we are reading The Silent Patient. I have a video on my channel with a breakdown, a little bit about the book, what our schedule is as far as timeline for meeting. And today was our first meet. Today is the 3rd, I want to say. So we've been reading this book for about 3 weeks. And then we have about 3 more weeks to go. So it's not too late if you're a fast reader, you want to pick the book up, join the book club. I would be happy to have you. So today's topic of discussion is going through parts 1 and 2 of the book. So I did make it through parts 1 and 2. So I wanted to first just chit chat about some of my interest, dislikes, or just, I have my note cards here. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. But yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how it's been reading the book. So to start, time management wise, I believe I had said that in order to keep up with the pace, you need to read like 5 to 7 pages a day. So for me, I found it a little bit easier to just go ahead and read this in chunks. So some days I didn't read at all. Other days I read, a couple chapters. So it just kind of, for me, was easier when I did sit down to just dive in and read as much as I could. But it was definitely easy for me to read this within the 3 weeks. And I think it would be easy for most people as well, because the way the chapters are set up, they're very short. Again, if you haven't gotten the book, I'll try to keep the spoilers to a minimum. But yeah, like for example, just looking at this right here, we have chapter 8. You literally flip 2 pages and you're back to the next chapter. So I think it was a pretty easy read as far as time management goes. Some of the interests for me as far as the book so far is I really like the way that it's set up. Within the parts, it has multiple chapters, which are short. Like I said, I love a good, easy read. I really like how it switches perspectives between, I'm guessing that one of the main characters, I don't really know who would be the main character, whether it would be Alicia. I guess technically it'd be Theo Faber, who is the psychotherapist. And so I really like how it switches between the perspective of Theo Faber and his experience. And then also it shifts into some of Alicia's diary, where all the real tea is, honey, all the real tea. So that's one thing I think that made it easy for me to continue reading, and just really interested to see like the perspective shift. So you're not just reading it all from one side or getting all of one person's story than the other. For the most part, it's told in a chronological order, but you have to remember that the main event of Alicia killing her husband happens in the beginning. So most of this is a recount of what happened from that point on when we're talking about Theo's perspective. But then when we get into Alicia's perspective, we move more into her backflashing into the past, relationships, friendships, and experiences that she had. So, so far at least, her perspective is more of what had happened, and Theo's perspective is what is happening in the present moment. if I had to pick out any difficulties in this book so far, the main thing I would have to say would be, because this is written from, I want to say, an English or British perspective, some of these names are not common. I mean, I myself don't have a common name, so I can relate to the idea that just because a name isn't common doesn't mean it's not common elsewhere. But if you're not used to reading from like an English or British perspective, then I would say that some of the names can be a little difficult to pronounce, like Diomedes, the head doctor at the hospital. I had to look up how to pronounce that because I'm like, I don't know. But that would be the main difficult thing for me so far. There are a few words in here that I'm not familiar with, and all I did was I just stopped, pulled up the dictionary app on my phone, and looked them up, and that was pretty much it. So for the most part, I'd say those are my main interests and difficulties so far. Now, for those of you who aren't able to catch this live, I'm going to be posting this after, so please feel free to drop down in the comments and let me know what your interest in the book has been so far, any difficulties. Let me know what your time management has been like too. Like, how's it been reading the book? Have you been able to kind of keep up with pace? Do you find yourself, reading less than 7 pages a day, reading more? Where are you in the book? Did you make it through parts 1 and 2? I just love to hear all of that. And if you don't want to get in the comments, you can always go ahead and hit me up in my DMs on Instagram as well. And then last but not least, of course, I'm actually going to post this video as a remixable video. So if you want to go ahead and remix and add your own perspective to this video as far as what you feel about it, I'd love to see that. I've never done that before, so that'd be something new for me as far as this channel goes. But I want to leave it open to the community for those of you who did join the book club, who did read the book, and, or even if you're not a part of my book club and you've read the book before and you want to just add your perspective, please remix this video. Go ahead and tell me what you think about it. I love to hear. So let's jump into part 1 of the book. So part 1 of this novel to me was mostly about character development. We were introduced to the main character, Theo Faber. He's a psychotherapist, and he literally has, in my opinion, a slight obsession with the other main character of this book, Alicia Benson, I want to say is her last name. She's the woman who allegedly murdered her husband, right? And so it kind of picks up with Theo wanting to start working at the hospital where Alicia has been committed. I personally got a few red flags from Theo. I have to say, I feel like there's this eeriness about him. Like, he seems like he really wants to help her and he's really interested in her story, but also like his boundaries, his level of healthy boundaries are very questionable. Very questionable. So I don't know about Theo yet, but I will say I don't want to spoil too much. Like I said, if you haven't read all the book, there were some choices that he made as far as reaching out, making contact to people, just his level of professional boundaries is not up to par in my opinion. So Theo is an interesting character. They do go a little bit into his backstory of his childhood. He did experience some trauma and things like that. So I will say you could tell Theo comes from a rough background, and maybe he can relate to Alicia in that way because from what the story tells in her diary, she also had a rough upbringing, and they both got like a little trauma bond going on right now. So that's one thing I noticed about him. As far as Alicia, we haven't learned too much about her outside of her diary. From what I could tell so far, she seems to be a really mysterious character, of course, because allegedly she murdered her husband. They're slowly giving us little details about her. But one thing I will say is I think it's really interesting the perspective that people have as far as like some of her neighbors, like Barbie, or even like her supposedly best friend from her art gallery, like the perspective they have of how close they were to Alicia, how much they knew her, and their relationship is completely different than Alicia's perspective herself on these relationships. So I think that's something interesting. I'm not going to spoil too much on that, but as you read Theo's accounts of him interviewing these people, trying to find out more about Alicia before this murder, you will find that the way that these characters tell their version of the relationship is very different from Alicia's diary and how she views their interactions and relationships. So I will say, yeah, Alicia was mysterious. I don't know if these folks just couldn't tell where they stood with her, or if you know, people just really wanted to like her, wanted to be liked by her, or just wanted to get to know more about her because she was so mysterious. You know, only time will tell with that one. Another character that we're introduced to, I already mentioned Barbie. She kind of comes in later towards the end of the book, so we haven't learned too much about her other than she's like a fanatic, extra nosy neighbor. So you'll learn more about her. She has a very different perspective about what happened. I think a lot of people are kind of open to the idea that maybe Alicia did it, maybe she didn't, but Barbie has a whole nother idea of what happened. So I thought that was an interesting thing to be introduced. We also met Theo's wife, Kathy. So I was surprised to find out that Theo had a wife. I'm not even gonna lie, because Theo, he gives a little bit of a creepier vibe, in my opinion. And so we find out that he's actually married. They've been married for a while, and some really messy things come up between him and his wife. Theo discovers something that he wasn't expecting about her, and now he's kind of living in the gray area in between what's going on with his relationship and where he stands with his wife. Again, I won't spoil that either, but it was a very unexpected twist. And that kind of starts Theo down this spiral of going from kind of pushing the boundaries to like going way over the line of boundaries. Okay. I just really would be interested, for those of you who have read, without me spoiling, dropping down in the comments or remixing this, and tell me what you think about the discovery Theo made on Kathy's laptop. What you think about that, okay? Another interesting character that we met was the head doctor, like I said, Diomedes, I believe his name is. He's the head doctor of the hospital where Alicia is being kept. He's a very interesting character as well. Kind of like Theo, he's a little odd, but he seems to be pretty, I want to say like optimistic in a sense, but also like he lives in a sort of a fantasy. And by the way that they depict this character in the book, I imagine him as kind of like this older man who's super quirky, and you know, he's well renowned in a sense, so that's pretty cool. But also like he's kind of starting to slip a little bit because the hospital is actually at risk and goes down. I haven't really said too much about why, but he's a little bit on edge about losing the hospital, losing, and there are a lot of things in place right now that are a little, so I would say his mind might be fragile as well. But I thought he was an interesting character because from my perspective, it seems like he's one of the people who actually can read Theo well. He's given him the benefit of the doubt, given him a little bit of freedom in his treatment with Alicia, because Theo does try some different ways to reach her. Alicia doesn't speak. She hasn't spoken since the murder happened. So the whole medical treatment is trying to get her to talk, trying to get her to open up, to engage with therapy. And so Diomedes has allowed Theo a little bit of flexibility in his treatment with her. I think that he's yet again being optimistic, but also I feel like he may have a feeling that something could be off with Theo, but he's trying to kind of like, you know, when you see so you don't fall, and there's the other person who's like, I'm gonna watch you and I'm gonna let you go ahead and fall in that same hole that I know is there, but I'll let you fall in it. That's kind of the energy I'm getting from Diomedes. So interested to see how that plays out. And then last but not least, I'm other characters, but these are just some of the main ones. Goes would be Christian. Now, Christian is um a peer of Theo. He also works in the hospital, but I believe he's more on the side of prescribing medications. He's also the doctor who is taking care of Alicia, and he's in charge of her medical dosage. And so him and Theo worked in a hospital years ago, right? And they have a little beef going on. Now, they haven't really said why. Theo doesn't like Christian. Christian doesn't like Theo. There's no real like rhyme or reason as to what happened, but they never really got along at the old hospital that they worked at. And now at this new hospital, it seems to still be some continued friction. The author doesn't really go too much into detail about why that is, but I have a feeling that Christian knows something that we don't know about Theo. So I don't know. Christian is kind of portrayed as like this brute, kind of quiet, not so necessarily nice character. And Theo is really elusive when it comes to dealing with him. He kind of makes it seem like he doesn't have an issue, but it's very obvious he does, right? And so I think Christian and Theo may have some past history, or maybe something happened at this other hospital that we haven't learned about. But I feel like that could be a major key if I were to have predictions, right? I feel like that could be a major key into Theo's story, and maybe even give us a little more information about his borderline obsession with Alicia. Again, crossing boundaries, okay? So part one to me was just about that character development. As we got into part two, I feel like the dirt starts to come to the surface, okay? All the tea starts to spill. We start to learn more about Alicia's relationship with her husband. It's funny because he's the one person at this point, I don't remember his name. That's crazy. His name is slipping me. I'm gonna look for it. But what I will say is in part two, we learn more about the relationship between Alicia and her husband. We also learn some things about her husband's brother. Very interesting things that kind of open up this whole nother can of worms that Alicia is going through. She's already an artist, and a lot of artists, you know, they get really thrown into their work. She had a project that she was responsible for with a deadline. And we all know when it comes to artists and deadlines, they don't always mix. Like even with me, when it comes to content creation, and I know I have a schedule of things that I need to post, edit, and get out, you know, life be life and sometimes. And when it comes to creating art and sharing such a vulnerable part of yourself, it doesn't always go within a timeline. So Alicia had a lot going on within her life at home and within her work life as well. So let's see. I'm trying to find the name of her husband. She had family members and stuff who were leaning on her. Again, like I said, her family life wasn't all that either. So she kind of had a lot going on. And I understand why. Gabriel. My bad, y'all. Her husband, late husband's name was Gabriel. And so you kind of learn a little bit about like the tangled web of their relationship, of their home life, of like their work life. He's also an artist, but he's a photographer, so their mediums are different, and their amount of like knownness is different as well. So that's an interesting dynamic between them. And so as we get into part two, we learn more about like the dynamic between Gabriel and Alicia, as well as the dynamic between Theo and Kathy, and how their relationships kind of have these tangled webs. And you kind of learn that Theo and Alicia become, in my opinion, more and more alike and on a same playing field as far as just their journey through life. It's very interesting. But one ends up in a mental hospital, a mental institution for murder, and the other one is a psychotherapist trying to treat her. Based on their professions or their places in the present, you would never be able to tell that their past and their home life and everything is so similar. And I think for me, that just goes to show everybody's just one experience, one situation away from life-changing events. And so we really should give each other more grace and be more understanding of what we're going through and what we've been through and who we are and how it's made us who we are today. So yeah, it's a whole lot of tea that comes out. We learn more about Alicia's perspective in part 2 as well. And that's when the thick of it starts to come through. So there is this main event that happened, and this will kind of wrap up my summary, parts 1 and 2. Towards the last few chapters between Alicia and another patient in the hospital. Her name's Elif, I believe. Elif is like a brute force in the hospital. She's like kind of one of the mean girls, one of the most feared in a sense, or unruly in regards to the other patients and also the staff members there. So Alicia, I'm assuming, is this smaller, weaker woman, and Elif is like this big patient that just has a lot of anger. And so there's an altercation that goes down between them. Let's just say that Ella found herself on the wrong end of that altercation. And so the hospital's trying to figure out how to move forward with the treatment, since Alicia at this point is, you know, obviously off her handles. And there's an interesting shift in how to choose to move forward with her treatment. And so it kind of goes into this space of Theo feeling sad because he thought he was getting through to her, and Alicia is now back doped up on her medicine thanks to Christian. Of course, Theo's mad about that. And towards the end, Alicia gives Theo this major key into her life, and that's how it ends in part 2. So I cannot wait to find out what's gonna happen next. I'm probably gonna sit down and start reading. I stopped myself literally at part 3 because I didn't want to get too far ahead for our meeting. I wanted to be right on track with everybody else. And again, if you haven't gotten the book, go ahead, get the book. You could definitely read this whole book within 3 weeks if you are an avid fast reader or if you have the time. Even if you don't, you're always welcome to join. But yes, we will be meeting on March 24th. That's in 3 weeks. It will be a Sunday, probably around this time as well. We will be reviewing parts 3 through 5. I don't have my notes from the original meetup, but I want to say it's like 100. Oh, here we go. I flip right to it. 120 pages between parts 3. Those of you who aren't able to make it here in this moment, of course, like I said, I'll be posting the video for replay. And go ahead and hit me up on Instagram if you have any questions or any comments, or maybe there are some spoilers you want to talk about, but you don't want to put them in the comments because you don't want to mess it up for anybody else. You're always welcome to reach out. And of course, if you had some comments, any difficulties, interests, or any tea that you thought was super interesting, please drop that in the comment as well. Or of course, remix this video, post your own version of the tea and how you think this book will turn out. I'd love to hear your predictions. I really want to know my predictions, but first let me get to these 4 book club questions in the back of the book. These are what I think, and then of course my prediction, and that will be it for this video. So in the back of the book, I want to say page 328, this one, not to be confused with the one that has the spoiler alerts. Okay, y'all? So I'm just gonna go through questions 1 through 4 because the rest of these kind of seem a little bit beyond where we've read, and I didn't even want to read too far. So I got to question 5 and I stopped. So question 1 says, the story begins with the revelation Alicia murdered her husband. Why do you think the author made this admission at the very start? So the author gets straight to it. It's even in the description that Alicia murdered her husband. I think that's the major mystery of the story. Is Did she do it or not? What actually happened? It kind of makes you attached to the story of what's going on with Alicia, and it makes you kind of want to go along on the ride with Theo to investigate about her life and to try to get her to talk, to want to hear her side of the story. It kind of paints this picture of the story, and I think that he makes this a mission at the start to kind of pull you in to want to know, like, is it true? And what the hell happened, right? Question 2, discussion question, says, Alicia's diary plays a key role in the book. What purpose do you think it serves? And does your perception of Alicia change the more that you read? So in regards to her diary, I think her diary, I already said this, is an interesting part because it gives you a little more of a perspective about how she views her relationships and how she views her life. I think that is a very key role in the book, and it kind of says of not just seeing like the outside story and like, you know, don't judge the book by its cover kind of thing, but giving you like the inside read of her inside thoughts, her internal struggles, and a little bit about like her story throughout this. It kind of shows you her inner thoughts and how she felt about her husband, how she felt about her friends and her life, and just what she was experiencing, her breakdowns and her breakthroughs, right? My perception of Alicia did change a little bit after reading her diary. In the beginning, like I wasn't really sure about her. Like I said, she did have a lot of struggles. The more that I read her diary, I realized that I could relate to her a little bit more. It kind of warms you up to her and lets you know a little bit more about what she's going through and why she is acting the way that she is. So, but I haven't made my full judgment about her quite yet. Okay, question 3 says, Alicia's silence is related to the Greek myth of this was one of the words that was hard for me. Alcestis, it's the mythology book. How do you feel about the story of the myth, and why do you think Alicia is silent? So the Greek myth of the Alcestis is actually told in here, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but basically it's a story of a woman who died for her significant other, went to the underworld, came back, and when she came back, she never spoke another word. Like, she went silent. So it kind of relates to Alicia and her story of what happened with her spouse and how she hasn't spoken a word since. It just so happened Alicia painted a painting of this myth in a sense, and herself connected, and named it the same thing. So there's like this big correlation between this myth and the events that took place with Alicia and her husband. Okay, why do I think she's silent? I have no idea. To be honest, I can't quite figure it out. I think that she's just fine in the head. I mean, as fine as fine could be when you allegedly murder your husband, right? But I think she's way more smart and calculated than most people think that she is. She's more aware. She chooses not to speak in a lot of instances, and also the medication and everything keeps her real doped up. So I don't know why she's not speaking, but I think she has a lot she's feeling and thinking and a lot to say. The last question is number 4. Theo's motives to work with Alicia are complicated. Do you think he wanted to help her? We talked about this a little bit, so I'll keep this one short. His motives to help her are complicated. They have a lot of things alike, like I said. At first, I thought he was just really interested. Sometimes doctors can kind of get this deep interest in a patient and really want to help them overcome this, especially if a lot of other doctors have tried and have not been successful. But I think it's a little more complicated when it comes to Theo Faber, because like I said, that man, he's a little odd. I do think he wants to help her, but I feel like his motives to help her might more be in a selfish aspect of the things that he can't help within himself, or also being able to do something that other people weren't able to do. I feel like he thinks that if he takes his approach of like understanding and softness, that he'll be able to make this once elite and once, well-known artist kind of open up to him and feel comfortable and safe to kind of like let him in. That's my perspective. But we'll see how it goes. So yeah, we are at basically 30 minutes now. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up. Overall, I really have enjoyed this read so far. For those discussion questions, I will try to go ahead and get everything typed up and put down in the comments, or not the comments, the description below. Please feel free to drop in the comments. Like I said, even if you haven't read the book, if you have any questions about the book or anything like that, you can always hit me up on Instagram at DLoveJourney. We will be meeting again on March 24th to go over the rest of the book. There will probably be a little bit more spoilers in there because at that point we'll be towards the end. We'll go through the rest of the discussion questions, and I may or may not post an overall review about the book, but we'll see about that. So yeah, I hope that this week, this month is treating you guys well. I am really excited to get back into reading. I hope that this book club is something that you guys like. You know, my community is very wide range. I've done a lot of shifts and changes. I kind of am very fluid about what I talk about and what I get into. My whole intention is just to share my life and my journey to loving myself more, getting back to the things that I love and enjoy, and of course encouraging you all to do the same. So maybe the book club thing is not a part of something that you're interested in, or maybe you're not interested in any of the other things that I do, but you do like reading books and you want to join. There's no wrong or right way, person, or anything to be a part of this community. Just take that which serves you, leave the rest, and make sure you take care of yourself. Love on yourself, okay? I am going to go ahead and end this live here. I will have the recap or the repost of the video up sometime later today. And then I will see you guys on March 24th for the final meet. All right, as always, I'm sending you guys my love. Continue to learn yourself more and more every day. Love yourself more and more every day. And I will catch you guys in the next video. All right, peace.